We're going to be building this swivel base drawing located on page 2-32 in your book. It's drawing number 3 at the end of chapter problems. So it's drawing, I call this drawing 2-3. First thing to note, this drawing is in millimeters. So let's go ahead and set up AutoCAD. If you haven't already done so, make sure your startup is set to 1. And with startup is 1, when you choose File, New, you'll get this menu here. And with this menu, we want to choose Start from Scratch. With Start from Scratch, we can choose Metric directly. Of course, remember the alternate way to do that is to use Format and then Units. Okay, so with that set up, let's set up our layers. So we're going to open our layers. Add one layer, call it Objects. Add a second layer. And we'll call this Center. The center layer, we're going to make green. So change the color to green. And then for the line type, we double click on it, choose load, and again, as typical, we're going to choose the center 2 line type. We click OK. When we get back to this menu, we want to make sure we choose center 2. Then we click OK. We can see that we have the center 2 line type here. Okay, so we want to make sure we start with the object. Okay, so what happened? I want to point out something that happened here, and it's not a bug, but it's the way that AutoCAD operates. So even though I entered the layers, I entered the first layer as the objects layer, and the second layer then as the center layer. AutoCAD reversed the order of these layers because AutoCAD puts everything in alphabetical order. And what happened is I didn't notice that it did this when I changed the color and the line type. So I ended up making my objects layer green with the incorrect line type. So I'm going to change that back to white. I'm going to change the line type here back to continuous, and then I need to move up to the center layer and actually make this one green and this one center 2. Okay, so the final thing we're going to do, if I double click on objects, I select the objects layer, we have the check mark here. So I go ahead and cancel this. We're now ready to start the drawing. So we can go ahead and I'll take a look at the drawing. And what we're going to do is we're going to start right here, and we're going to essentially box this drawing out. We're not going to worry about these curves here. We're going to draw it as if it were a simple box, just right angles for now, and we'll take care of the curves later. And we'll work our way around the drawing. We'll go back and put in the curves later. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over by 60 here. If this radius is 20, that means the diameter is 40. The total distance between the top and the bottom, is 60 because the radius over here is 30, so the diameter has to be 60. So if this is 40, we must have 10 millimeters on the bottom and 10 millimeters on the top. So we're going to move over by 60, up by 10, over by 36, up by 40, and then we'll just work our way back, essentially mirroring what we had on the bottom. So we're going to go over by 60, up by 10, over by 36, and then up by 40. So we'll come back to our drawing. We'll start here. Let me put I'm going to turn on my coordinates to see where I am in my drawing space. And I'm going to zoom a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start. I need to start real close down here, and once I make the first line, I'll just zoom into it. And somehow I lost my. There it is. This disappeared. All right. Okay, so you see that first. You see my coordinate there? I'm at 650, 400. I don't like to be there. So I'm going to just actually put a point in. I'm going to say I'm going to start at 30, 30. It gives me a good reference point to make sure that I'm somewhere near 0. Again, it's really not that important because AutoCAD doesn't care so much. But I like to be close to 0, 0. All right, so I need to go over by 60, up by 10, over by 36, up by 40, over by 36, up by 10, and then over by 60. Hit escape. I'm going to zoom this up, reduce it down a little bit, and I sort of have this outer shell here. This line here we don't actually need, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. Do not delete anything over here. You'll see that this actually is useful and important. Let's take a look at our drawing here. Let's go ahead and put our circles in. So we have a circle of diameter of 20 located at 30 millimeters up from this bottom corner. So let's come back to our drawing. Let me close that one out. I'm choosing my circle diameter, and I'm going to hover over this point, and then once I bring my tracking line up, I'm going to type 30, which will move me to the center, and then we had a circle of diameter 20. We also had a circle of diameter 30 at that same point. So we'll put that circle in. Now, over here on the other side, we also had a circle of diameter 20. I'm just going to do a copy. So I can select this, click on it to do a move, type C to turn it into a copy, and then once I get that tracking line, all I have to do is type 96, and it will move it over. Now also, we have this other one that's halfway in between. It's at 48. It has a different diameter, but we can change that afterwards. So we get the tracking line. We type 48. I hit escape twice to stop the copy and then to stop the select. Now I can select this. Choose quick properties. Change the diameter of this from 20 to 10. Okay, so we need to put these arcs in on the two ends. So we can choose arc, and we can do start center end. So we can start at the top, click on the center, and then click on the end. Do the same thing on the other side. We start at the top, click on the center. Now here the arc goes in the other direction, so we have to hold down the control key to change the direction, and that will allow you to change the arc. Okay, so this essentially finishes the drawing, except for the fact that we don't have an arc here. So we need to create an arc here. So what we can do, there are actually two ways to do this. Looking at the drawing, we see this has a radius of 15. And we could put in a tan radius circle. So we choose this line, we choose that line, and then the radius of the circle, which is 15. And when we do that, you see the following. The circle does not actually make contact with this line. And the reason is, because this is a circle of radius 15, this line segment is only a length of 10. But the tan radius circle puts in the circle as if this line segment extended out to infinity. So it's as if the line segment extended out to here. The only way you can put a tangent in here is if you do that, because a tangent normally would be at 15. So the distance from here to there right now is 15, and then the distance from where this point would be a tangent if this line came up is also is 15. That's the only way you can have a tangent. So what do we do here? Well, what we can do is we can select this, and if you notice, I've been blowing up the drawing as I've been talking about this, because we actually really need to do this in order to do this properly. But if we select the circle, we then choose Move. Now, we want to specify the base point. So where are we moving? How do we move this circle? To select the base point, what we want to do is this is where we're going to use the object snap tracking. We're going to take a tracking line from this endpoint. So we start at this endpoint. I haven't hit my mouse button. I slide it over, and at the point where I get my intersection, I hit my mouse button. So that gives me the point that I'm moving at. And then all I do is I move that vertically until I get directly to the end point, to that intersection. Then I hit my mouse button again, and I've done the move properly. So now this circle has moved so that it's actually tangent here, and it makes contact to the end here. From there, we simply need to use trim. So we can use trim and select, we can select this line, this line, this line. I'm not sure if we have to select both of those. I hit enter. And then we can delete that. This line here, we can just plain delete now. We don't need it. And then we can do a trim. This may not actually trim. If I select this, I think it will, but I'm not sure. Enter. Yes, it will work, so we can delete that. Sometimes when you do trims, if you trim away pieces, you find that there are then other pieces you can't trim. If that's the case, then you can still move them. So if I couldn't trim this away, then I could select the endpoint and move the endpoint back to the intersection with the arc. So that would have worked as well. So now if you look, we have this arc exactly as we see here. Now, I said there are two ways to do this, or at least there's two ways to do this that we can do today. There's actually a third way to do this that we'll learn later. But we could also do this instead of using a tan circle by simply doing a 2-point circle. So in a 2-point circle, you just specify 2 points on the diameter. And what we could do is just specify any point out here and then maybe we can't do this. This was something I was thinking that was possible, but maybe it's not. Actually, I don't think it is. So I had thought that if we specified the endpoint, that I could get a tracking line coming down, and then I could use that tracking line to just specify a circle of diameter 15, and then in the same way we could move it over. But it doesn't look like we can. So we're just going to use the tan radius again down here. So we use the tangent, radius of 15 because we used it before, it's already there. So all I have to do is hit enter. I have my circle. I select it. I choose move. For the reference point, I want to choose that point, and you can see I started moving, and what did I do? I hit the mouse button on that corner. You can't hit the mouse button there. You just have to get a tracking line. So I have to start over. So I select it. I choose move. I come over here, get my tracking line, slide it over. Here I select. Now I move it back. Hit return. And that's proper now. Now, I think we can trim this way as well. So if we trim this, if we choose this first as a trim, we can delete this and that. Yeah, so this is interesting. It doesn't let me delete this. It doesn't let me delete this because the end of this is not part of the trim. However, once I hit escape, I can simply delete that because it's a line segment. And then when I hit trim again, I can select this and this, hit enter, and then delete the other portion. So now, as you can see, our drawing is done, except for the center marks. So in this case, we're using center lines, and then we have a line the whole length of the part. So we're going to go into our format, dimension style, modify symbols and arrows, make sure we're set for center line, hit OK. Hit close. Choose my center mark. First make sure that we're in the correct layer. So we want to be in the center layer. Choose my center line. Click on the outside. You see our center line gets put in. Repeat for this circle. repeat for that circle. I'm not quite sure why it doesn't give us the center line for this one. And it may have to do with the dimension style. Nope, that's even. Okay, so we're going to leave that as is. So what we're missing is we're missing the lines between the two. So we can go to line and draw a line there. Draw a line here. In this case, it actually ends up coming out as a solid line. And we can come up to the top here if we want to make a longer line here. So all this really comes down to is what the length of the lines are. And if the lines aren't long enough, then you're not going to see the dashes. So in this case, I'm actually going to just go ahead and leave this as is. For this piece here, what we're going to do is we're just going to put in a small segment that doesn't connect, like that. So there we have our drawing. We can go ahead and save it. So we choose File, Save As. Put it in my Spring 21 directory. Make a Chapter 2 folder. And save this as 2-3.